Hey, welcome! Today we are diving into this silent, invisible war that's happening literally all around us, every single day. We're going to find out how plants, which, can't run or hide, have become absolute masters of self-defense.
It's a great question, right? Plants are just stuck in one place, and they are constantly being attacked by fungi, bacteria, all sorts of pathogens. So how do they survive? Well, they've built this incredible defensive system, and the best way to understand it is to think of the plant not just as a plant, but as a fortress.
So, for this explainer, we're going to take a tour of that fortress. First, we'll check out its pre-built walls, its permanent fortifications. And then, we're going to meet the army inside, a super dynamic force that just springs into action the second an enemy makes it through the gates.
All right, first up, the fortress walls. These are what we call the plant's passive defenses. These are the structures that are always there, 24/7, providing that crucial first line of protection against pretty much any potential invader. The number one material in these walls is lignin. Seriously, think of this stuff as the concrete and steel of the plant world. It's this super complex polymer that makes the cell walls incredibly tough, and I mean really tough and rigid.
So what lignin does is pretty amazing. It doesn't just provide raw physical strength, it also makes the cell walls less porous, kind of like waterproofing them, which blocks the enzymes that pathogens use to try and break down the tissue. This stuff is so chemically stable that only a few highly specialized organisms, like certain wood-rotting fungi, can even begin to digest it.
Next up in our building materials is suberin. Okay, so if lignin is the concrete, suberin is the fortress's waterproof sealant. It's a waxy substance, a main ingredient in cork, and it's absolutely vital for controlling what gets in and out of the plant, especially in the roots.
Suberin is a fantastic defender. It creates these barriers that stop water and, of course, any waterborne pathogens that might be hitching a ride. A really great example is in banana plants. The resistant types of bananas have more suberin in their roots, which physically stops little burrowing worms called nematodes from ever getting past the outer layers.
And finally, coating the entire outside of the leaves and stems, we've got cutin. This is another waxy, water-repellent polymer that makes up what we call the cuticle. It's the very first barrier that an airborne fungal spore or bacterium is going to meet. It's basically the glossy, protective skin of the whole plant fortress.
So those walls are pretty formidable, right? But, no fortress is perfect. And some clever invaders have figured out strategies to find and exploit the weak spots. Let's take a look at how they get in.
You see, every fortress needs gates to get supplies and send messages. For plants, these are natural openings like stomata on the leaves, which they need for gas exchange, or these things called lenticels in the bark. They're essential for the plant's survival, but they're also unguarded gates, perfect entry points for pathogens.
So invaders kind of have a few choices. They can slip through one of those natural openings we just saw. They can get lucky and find a fresh wound, like from a broken branch. Or, and this is for the most aggressive pathogens, they can just launch a direct, head-on assault against the wall itself. And here's what that direct assault by a fungus looks like. So a spore lands on a leaf, and first it secretes enzymes called cutinases to soften up that waxy outer layer. Then it forms this special structure called an alprosorium to basically glue itself to the surface. From there, it builds up this incredible amount of physical pressure. We're talking like a tiny hydraulic press to literally punch a specialized little tube, a penetration peg, right through the wall.
And this brings us to a really crucial idea. Everything we've seen up to now has been passive defense. These are the walls that are always up. But what happens when those walls are actually breached? Well, that's when the active defense, the fortress's army, is finally mobilized for a counterattack.
Okay, the alarm bells are ringing. The enemy is officially inside the gates. Now the plant has to shift gears, moving from just passive fortification to a dynamic, targeted counter-assault.
So how does the plant even know it's being attacked? The secret is something called elicitors. See, when a pathogen's enzymes start chewing on the cell wall, they create these tiny little fragments of that wall. The plant recognizes these specific fragments as a sign of invasion. They are literally the alarm bells that tell the army to mobilize.
One of the very first things the plant does is form a papilla. You can see it in the diagram here. As that fungal peg tries to push its way through, the plant cell goes into overdrive, rapidly building a new reinforced wall right underneath the point of attack. It's like soldiers rushing a barricaded door that's being smashed in.
But sometimes, a simple barricade just isn't going to cut it. For those times, the plant has a much more dramatic strategy. a kind of scorched earth policy. It actually means sacrificing its own troops to contain the enemy.
This is called the hypersensitive response. What happens is, the plant intentionally triggers cell death in all the cells immediately surrounding the infection. At the exact same time, it rapidly pumps in lignin, remember our friend from the outer walls, to create this dead, impenetrable barrier. This totally quarantines the pathogen, cutting it off from any nutrients and stopping it from spreading. It's pretty brutal, but effective.
And the plant has other tricks up its sleeve too. It can rapidly lay down layers of suberin to create a corky barrier. Or, in some cases, it can perform surgery on itself through something called abscission. It selectively dissolves the connections between cells to just drop an entire infected leaf. It sacrifices a part to save the whole plant.
And it's not all just structural defenses. The plant also jumps into chemical warfare. It starts producing these special proteins that are designed for one thing: to shut down the pathogen's enzymes. It's like disarming the enemy by neutralizing the very weapons they're using to break down the fortress walls.
So we've had our tour of the plant's fortress. After seeing this whole microscopic battlefield, what are the key things we should remember? This table right here is pretty much the ultimate study guide for all of this. You can see how polymers like lignin and suberin play a dual role. They're both passive walls and active reinforcements. And then it summarizes the purely active responses, from that little localized papilla to the super dramatic hypersensitive response, and that clever chemical sabotage with enzyme inhibitors. It's a truly integrated defense system. And that leaves us with one final thought. Understanding this incredible natural fortress isn't just a cool biology lesson, it is the key to better protecting our crops, our food, and our forests. So the question we have to ask ourselves now is, how can we use this knowledge to help reinforce the fortress and make sure our plants keep on winning the war?